conversation keeps you in touch with the realities of life, links you with the greatest minds around the world, and leaves you better off than when you joined it. Don't miss it for anything. Join the conversation on the social media channels showing on your screen. Good evening. It's a lovely Thursday evening, and welcome to the conversation. I am your host, Sola Adesoye, and it's so exciting to be back on the conversation. This is the first conversation we're having in 2022, and I'm sure that if you've been a part of, the conversation ever since it started, you must have truly had a wonderful and enriching time, not just of learning, but also interacting with me and with the guests that I have brought on the program through time. And truly, the conversation has been an amazing blessing. And I'm just so glad to have the privilege to come into your space, to your home, and wherever you may find yourself, to bring you conversations to enrich, and just to improve on the quality of life that you live. So here we are this evening, the first conversation for 2022, and trust me, there are many more that are going to be coming. That'll be a huge blessing to you. Right now, we want you to just share, click the share button and just share and broadcast this so that we can bring other people into this space. And trust me, the conversation tonight is really going to be a wow time. So here we are on the set of the conversation, and I have some wonderful people, guests in the studio with me today. And so I'd like to introduce them. Let me first of all introduce to you, viewers out there, Pastor Harrison Edward. Praise God. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And he's a relationship coach. He's such an exciting person, and he's also a leader in ministry as well, who's impacting the lives of people. So good to have you here.
Thank you so
this
much
evening.
for having me.
And I'm sure that it's going to be a good time.
Sure,
Really
that's
would
it.
be. And we also have the only female in the studio, Stacy Ozigi. Really great having you. Stacy is an accountant, and she likes the money. She looks for the money, and she looks like she's got a lot of money also.
Okay.
So
Thank you
Stacy,
for having
good to
me.
have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And we also have Folari Mosuro. So Folari is an entrepreneur. He's such a huge brain box, doing all kinds of amazing things. And he also is what we call you CEO of booksellers now.
Aspiring
CEO. But if you ever go to the bookshop, they've got tons of books, and that's also a reflection of his state of mind, because you get to read all the books, I guess.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. So again, welcome to the conversation. We want you to click the share button, invite your friends, because this is going to be an exciting time. And tonight we're looking at accurate relationships for strategic positioning, where we're in an amazing season, and God has given us a word, and the key word amongst a frame of words is leverage. And leverage is such a powerful word. And for me, and particularly for this conversation, it's important that we learn how we can take that word and activate it in our lives, especially with respect to relationships. When we look, through, the scriptures, and we look at life itself, we find this singular truth that man was made for relationships, and relationships come at different levels. The first relationship you're introduced to is that of your parents. As a little child, you get to meet older people who care for you and nurture you until a time when you can stand on your own. And then you have siblings and all kinds of relationships. And then you get into, institutions of learning. And that's another level of relationships where you have teachers and you develop friendships. And it's quite interesting. I try to look at myself and look at the fact that I went to secondary school. And I find out that, the friends I've carried through life, interestingly, are my secondary school friends. And that's not to say that I haven't had friends in university and all of that. But we were in a boarding house setting and we learned to connect with one another. And today, when we see one another, sometimes after 30 years, we've had to see what we just kind of plug in. And we're of great value to one another, and so on and so forth. And then we look at the relationship between a man and a wife, relationship between a man and his mentor. And for me, relationship is critical to life. Many people are not where they should be because they just don't understand how to connect and how to plug in. And one of those texts that we began to look at, the Second Kings chapter 4, the story of Elisha and the widow whose sons were about to be taken, as slaves, and how she came and screamed to the prophet and said, "Look, I'm in dire straits, and what do I need to do?" And the prophet said, "What do you have in your house?" And she said, "I've got a jar of oil." And he said to her, "Okay, well, you and your sons." That's relationship as well. It's got to be you and your sons. Go into the house, lock the door. But before you do that, go out and borrow vessels from your neighbors. And so she went out and borrowed vessels, and she locked herself in the room and began to pour the oil. And the minute the vessels stopped, the oil also stopped. So the miracle was short-circuited by the number of vessels that were available. And the number of vessels were directly proportional to the number of relationships she had. And, like I had shared and still maintained, she couldn't go to borrow from people she didn't exchange pleasantries with, just simple greetings. If you never said good morning to your neighbor, then how are you going to say, I need to borrow a vessel? So her net worth became a reflection of her network. So the more people she could connect with. Harrison, what do you have to say to this? Looking at life, have you benefited from accurate relationships in your life?
Of course. It is commonly said that when God wants to bless you, he will bring people into your life, or bring a
when
person.
God wants to bless you, he brings people into your life.
But when Satan wants to destroy you, he also brings people.
Wow, fantastic.
So you see that most times when you look at what's wrong with you, you can trace it to somebody who's wrong in your life. Or when you look at something that's right with you, you can also trace it to somebody who's right in your life.
So again, how far back can we trace these things? Because do we trace it to 5 years, or can we trace some of these things to family?
So the thing about relationship is you cannot predict relationship. That's why it is very good for you to learn how to manage relationship from a very early age. Because one of the things that is lacking, I believe that is lacking, is that people don't learn how to manage relationship. When I talk about love and talk about relationship, I tell people that I don't teach you how to fall in love. I mean, you can fall in love whichever way you want to fall in love, but managing the relationship is usually the problem in any given relationship.
That is huge. I'm sorry I have to keep cutting in.
Yes.
Because you're saying some solid things here. Because that word manage is huge. People go to study management.
Yes.
Business management,
Business management,
entrepreneurship, and all of
Yes.
that. And so you're also saying that we need to learn to manage relationships.
Very correct. Because if you don't learn how to manage relationships, you'll find that you have people come into your life and people leave your life with bad experience.
Wow.
Everybody could be bad, but there's a way you manage relationship that keep the people thinking that I had a good deal with this person.
Whoa.
It's just how we're supposed to get to, is where we're supposed to get to, how we're supposed to live. Because if you start living your life in such a way, understanding that you don't know the question you ask, how far my relationship can come. Because somebody you've not seen 20 years, suddenly you see the person 20 years after, and you need that person at the time. The person remembers history.
Oh, wow.
And their experiences with you.
Oh, my goodness.
And that will form the basis for which the person is going to offer services or help or whatever it is. Yes. So it's very important that we learn how to manage relationships.
Amazing. Let me get to Stacy. I mean, she's the only woman here, the only lady here. Now, and I'll take you to family again, because women, kind of are deeply connected with family. Let's look at your relationship with your parents. How healthy was it?
I think the relationship with my parents was really healthy. My parents taught us how to express ourselves and also how to love. I think one of the things that was figured majorly in my family was laughter, friendship.
Interesting.
Yes, a lot of laughter. Where I think my brother-in-law referred to us one time as the Von Trapp family. We're the family that get our parents seated down and present during Christmas time, Easter time, or we're just having fun. And my mom comes back from church and says, "Everybody come, let me teach you a dance, the twist." And we're doing it in the parlor just before we have lunch. So yes, I had a very good relationship with my parents and siblings.
Were there any crisis times? I mean,
Wow.
where how you handled things was going to go a long way to defining, your connections with your parents. Or, for some people, it's getting married, and they just don't manage it well. So, was there any particular one you can recollect?
My family was special in the fact that we lost my mom early to cancer.
Oh, wow.
When I was 17 years old. And that was a big crisis for us. But the advantage we had is that she brought us up in the faith. And my youngest sister at the time was 5 years old and had just received the Holy Spirit the week that my mom passed. And so we grew up with trusting God. And that helped us to be able to cushion different kind of crises that even arose from the fact that she was not around. So for me, yes.
So you call yourself a relationship manager, expert.
I would say I have quite some understanding in managing relationships.
No, that is good. Well, Folari, peculiarities. What was it like, especially managing, the home relationship? I mean, I've sat with your parents, and I think that's an advantage for me. I enjoyed my time with them, and I found them to be special people. Now that's me. It was a one-time experience, because sometimes you say that and the son is saying, wow, you really didn't get to meet them. You have no idea. So what was it like for you? I mean, how your parent management skills like?
So I've got to be careful because they might watch this as well. But I mean, one thing I noticed very early on was my parents had a peculiar relationship. First, my father is a Muslim, my mom is a Christian, but then they had such a strong bond.
Wow.
And I remember when I was going to, one of the things I learned early about my managing relationship was, my dad let my mom go to church, and then she started to take us to church. And so one day, I was going to go to church, and I said to my dad, "Oh, I'm going to church with my mom." And he said, "Oh, sure, go." And then when I came back, he sat me down and he said, "I'm not going to be against you going to church, but I also want you to know that even though you are going to church, I want you to be very broad-minded. I want you to meet other people who are not Christians. And I want you to extend the same kind of virtues and kindness and graciousness to them as you would extend to Christians."
Yeah.
And so what that taught me early on, and that was what he exemplified. I mean, even till date, I mean, he's got friends, all sorts of friends, so I got a good sort of a front row seat looking at how he managed his own relationships. As a teenager, I was a little bit rebellious. So those were the difficult years.
Milky Way.
Just a little bit. But then I think I also realized that they wanted the best for me. And so even sometimes when they said, "Oh, go in this direction," even if I didn't understand it, there was enough evidence to show that they had always wanted the best for me. And so they were not erring in their judgment. And sometimes we disagreed, but the perception was always, look, we're trying to do the best as we know it. And that's that's something I also took, that sometimes parents might have these aspirations and they may be wrong, but they mean well most times. Most parents mean well. So I think generally I managed it, or we both managed it very well. I mean, they did, they accepted my headiness as a teenager. And I think that I also, I learned that they meant well. And once you see that people mean well for you, it gives you that confidence to always, even when you're unsure, you go back to them to say, you know what, I'm not getting this right, but can you help me with this? And that's what it was like for us.
I don't know about you watching, but honestly, I'm learning a lot here. You know, there's just a strand, you know, that's is flowing right now, and it's based on what you said, managing relationships. Yours is, I mean, I wish I had your dad here now. And the reason is, so you're coming from a family where you've got a mother who's a Christian and a father who's a Muslim. That is PhD in management required, because even some Christians, and I don't know what it's like, find it difficult to manage friends who are not Christians.
Yeah.
We just don't even know how, you know, to relate and how to function. And we kind of find ourselves in this, we want to put everything in boxes. And it just doesn't work, because, you know, the contents of those boxes really need to mix, you know, and exchange. But, you know, you said something here which also brings, you know, the idea that children need to understand their parents,
Yeah.
and also need to manage, you know, those relationships. Well, back to you, Harrison, and let's look at getting married. So when we're going to go ahead, and I'm sure we'll be able to come back, because I've seen people who, so young guy meets girl and is madly in love with the girl and insists, look, I'm 200% sure. And then you go to your parents, and your parents are like, over a dead body. I mean, your wife is from Delta State and you're from Cross River State.
Yeah.
And they say, no, we don't like Delta people. And then you throw a tantrum and you tell your parents, I'm going to have my way. I'm an adult,
Whether you like it or
and
not.
whether you like it or not. And it creates a lot of tension. Now, you talked about management. So that's a crisis moment that obviously needs management. How would you say such things need to be handled? I know we've gone forward. We're still going to come back.
You know, one of the things that, from my experience with parents who are having this issue of, I don't want you to marry this girl, I don't want you to marry this guy. One of the things that I've seen is that they're looking for your maturity. Yeah, they're looking for your maturity. It's the way you handle the situation that tells them that, look, this guy is mature enough, or this girl is mature enough for this.
The way you handle
The way you handle it. Most people go with the default reaction. Throw tantrum, run out of the room. I'm going to kill myself. I'm not doing this anymore. You are not I'm old enough. That's not the best reaction. Dialogue. Sitting them down, talking to them, understanding their position. Because many times, if you could take a few minutes to understand where they're coming from, it will be easier for you to convince them if you have to. There are some other times that you may need to change your mind when you understand where they're coming from.
Wow.
So it's important that you exhibit maturity in that instance. When you do that, trust me, I've seen it over and over again. The parents are the one who say to themselves that this guy knows what he's doing.
Yes. And
that's what they want to see.
And,
whether you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Interestingly, you're just dropping stuff here. And for me, I think it's important, especially for those who are watching, that if you handle things right and you manage it right, it may lead you to a point where you will change your mind.
Yes.
So lots of young people will go in thinking, I've got to change their mind. But your mind may be the one
that needs to be changed.
Yes,
very correct.
If you listen to them and also follow through what I'll call the process and the dialogue process.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, this is goodness. I'm sure someone watching is maybe thinking, I wish I heard this like 5 years ago. I've seen people make such a terrible mess of just wanting to get married, and something that could have been beautiful just ended up being messed up. There was a case that I was privy to, and what happened to the girl when she was insisting was they said somebody had jazzed her. This is not our daughter. We know our daughter. She's well behaved. Suddenly she meets this guy, and she can't think straight. And so they came up with, so a different perception of the girl because they saw rebellion and they never seen their daughter rebellious. And if she only learned dialogue and the need for dialogue, the need to convince, the need to show maturity, like you're saying. Stacy, did you look like someone who, I mean, they saw your husband to be and they just said, he's the man?
Actually, no. Because,
oh, really?
Yes, I am Yoruba and my husband is Ibira. And Yoruba people in the olden days or in the time of my parents, my grandparents, I wouldn't necessarily say embrace the Ibira people.
I know where it's so, and that's not even now. You still find those traces there.
So I remember when I did tell my dad that, this is Charles. We have a relationship, and he said to me that, well, we are Christians, and we will do what God says we will do, and he just gave us time. So I saw that he was observing us, and from him I learned observation too. And the questions he asked in the 4 years when we were dating was, how is Charles? How is Charles? Which is my husband's name. He never said that, what is going on now? He just said, how is Charles? Apart from him, there were other people that knew we were dating, like neighbors that saw us maybe walking around the road and came to tell my stepmom at the time that we saw your daughter on the road. She was talking to an Ibira boy. I just said, true. And they were talking for long hours. And they were church members because my parents were church people. And she would say that, we know the boy. That's what they didn't say. They never committed and they never said no, but they just observed. And as they observed, they got to know him better. I got to understand them better. And I remember Daddy saying at the time that Diolu, which is my native name, is that as children of God, we need to give each other space because my dad's brothers, too, actually are Muslims.
Wow. Yeah.
So I grew up in the Christian Muslim. I have cousins that are Muslims, and we live together properly. So those kind of scenarios was normal in our environment. And my husband also grew up in the same environment. Now, both our parents were professors, so we had some things that were close. Yes. But we also had family members that were bent against the Ibira Yoruba thing and put in snide comments or tried to cause some problems. But as time went by, I just, like he said, maturity is key. I just went on with the relationship. And my dad actually came to see me after a few years and said to me that, are you people planning on getting married?
So he popped the question.
And I said to him that, no, I'm facing my books now because I understood that making a fuss was not about it. And they could see something that I couldn't see. There was a reason why they were saying that. There's a proverb in my language that says that what an adult sees while sitting down, a younger child cannot see, even if the child is standing up. So I always remembered that, and I loved my dad. He explained his heart to us, especially when my mom was not there. So because of that, apart from wanting to please him, he allowed us to understand him because there was always communication before we reached the age of marriage or seeking to marry. And he also tried to understand us, which really helped. Key. So that worked for us. We did get married. This is
20 what?
24 years actually.
Wow. So I mean, it's worked.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're having a swell time. Now, Folari is an elite. What should I don't want to. I wanted to say is an eligible bachelor, but I don't know whether he's taken.
No. Very eligible.
Very okay. So, all the ladies out there, you probably need to send me an email if you want to find out details. But you've been in relationships before. So you know, we're taking that with management, dialogue, and all of that. Did these principles come to play?
I think so. I think that, I mean, you will always find those principles. Sometimes relationships may end. I remember something my dad said to me about my past relationship and when it ended. And, you know, he said to me, he said, you know, it's ended, but don't burn your bridges. The fact that
Wow.
That's so
you
powerful.
know, you guys did not end up getting married does not mean that you cannot, because it didn't end, because you know it was like you could still be friends. You don't know where she's going to be in another decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, and you may still need each other in decades.
Whoa.
So he always said to me,
Oh.
don't burn
Burn
your
your
bridges.
bridges.
I mean, it was a, he said, you know, and even if you wanted to be heady, I mean, he would just keep saying, don't burn your bridges. You just don't know tomorrow. And I think about managing relationships, I mean, there are peculiarities that people have, right? So you're with somebody, you're trying to learn about that person is trying to learn about you. So there's going to be a lot of dialogue, there's going to be a lot of patience,
Yeah.
and there's also going to be a lot of sacrifice,
Yes.
right? And that's natural, and it may not end, or it may not proceed to marriage. But I mean, people I've been in relationship with have helped me with business. You know, they've recommended me to friends. And I found this really interesting. An ex was even trying to get someone suitable for me, and I just, you know, that was
When it didn't work, he's like, I think I know your type.
So I mean, what I'm just trying to say is that, you know, so you have to have a long range view, and you have to relate with people just pleasantly, be warm, be kind, be gracious, and even when things don't work, you know, still have that cordiality amongst you. So that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah.
Woo.
That's it.
You know, I was going to say that one of the things that complicates relationships is the premarital sex, because you know we
You've
advise
touched
that
something.
don't be close to the ex, and the only reason we're advising that is because of sex. If all you shared
Was friendship.
was
Was
friendship
friendship.
and conversation, I wouldn't have a problem with my wife having a conversation with an ex. So most times when this thing is talked about, we always limit it to religion. Oh, is that your Bible is not current? Your
Current
Bible is
and all
not.
of that.
No, is that it will not. It will take away the complications of life.
Yes. Agreed.
Wow. Loaded. Now, I'm coming back to him and taking a strand from there. I read somewhere many years ago, and I can't remember who made this statement categorically. And he said the most critical points of life are the entry point and the exit point. And so, took a strand. You enter into this world, but you're going to exit the world. You enter into a relationship, you're going to enter. Even marriage has an exit point, till death do us part. Now, and that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone would exit, because a business could continue and outlast, you know, a generation. But those 2 points are very critical: how we enter and how we manage the entry and how we manage the exit. You just spoke about the exit, and I think that's fantastic. What about managing the entry? So back to you, Harrison, because the starting point, how do we manage that?
There are some relationships that are divine.
Divine.
Yes. And there are other relationships that are deliberate or determined, right? So if you're entering a divine, most times when you enter a divine relationship, you don't even know you don't even know how you entered. It just happened. You know, I remember I had a boss some years ago at a point in my life where I was in a place, you know, I was in a place and I needed a job. So I met a friend of mine asked if I could work for someone. And I said, well, why not? So he sent my details to that person. And the person reached out to me and said, please send me your
resume.
Your resume, yeah, your CV sent to me. So I sent to the person, but I kept sending to the wrong email address.
Wow.
So the person traveled out and got back after some days and called again and said, I haven't seen it. And I said, I've sent it several times. At the time, it was when we used to go to cyber cafe to send send emails.
That was the time.
You know? So I would go back to the cyber cafe and send it again. I kept sending and sending. And at the point, he just said to me, you know what? Just come to the office. Come for the interview. I went to the interview, and trust me, I failed. I told myself, you failed this interview.
Whoa.
It was hedge fund business, and I didn't know anything about hedge fund at the time. And they asked me a question about hedge fund. This was the HR, and I knew the answer was wrong because I didn't know what hedge fund was at the time. So I just left the place and thought to myself, well, this is over. Then he called me and said, I want you to come. I got to the office, he sat me down, and we started talking. No interview, we just spoke, and he was so excited. After the interview, I'd already started going. He called his friends to come and see this new guy.
Wow.
I was shocked. And then that was a turning point of my life. It was from that guy that I earned my first 1 million.
Whoa.
I didn't plan it. And then after a while, I realized that if he had seen my email, he would not have called me back.
He would not have called
No.
you back. So all of that was
It was divine.
just divinely orchestrated.
Yes. It was divine. So those ones, you may not know what to do and all of those, but when it comes to determined, deliberate relationship, you have to be, first of all, your best and your honest self. Because people present the wrong them, and then they expect the people to understand when they find out they're real.
The real person.
So that's where also be who you are. When you go for an interview, especially a relationship interview, I'm not talking about marriage now. I'm talking about when you meet someone, present your CV. Do not present the CV of another person.
So people are doing that
Yes,
now.
you say things that are not true. You say things that are not. You say I'm a very patient person. I'm very patient. You say, you don't know me. I'm quite patient. And then you have to wait for a few minutes, and you're already throwing tantrums.
And they find out you.
So they're like, I thought you said you were patient. It was somebody else's CV that they presented. So when you enter into a relationship, the ones that are determined, make sure you present yourself. Tell the person from day one, this is me. All right. It may sometimes it may not get you the favor you want, but like I always believe, relationship is built over time, not overnight.
Over time.
Not overnight. So I don't need you to know everything about me today. All right. I need you to just be in my life and see my best and see my worst. That's what relationship is about.
Wow. Well, if you are just joining us, or you've been a part of this program so far, I'm sure that you're kind of like rocking in your seat and just enjoying every single moment. Be the best at every single time. Just be your best. Again, coming back to you. So because what you've said, while you focused on maybe marketplace, also relates to boy meets girl. And just be plain, and just because you're also presenting a resume.
Yeah.
But this time it's not typed. It's not through email. You're expressing those things. And again, people lie about who they really are. And they paint a totally different picture. And once you get, so again, the entry point, once you don't manage the entry well, then all kinds of things also happen.
The journey becomes very difficult. It is better that people discover who you are than for you to lie about who you are. Right? So I'm not promising you that I'm the best, because nobody's the best, actually. Nobody's perfect.
Exactly.
So you can't come into a relationship. I honestly don't know why we always fall for that. You just sound, it's like somebody who is living a relationship and going to another relationship and is making the other person feel like the other person was the problem. Many times when people tell me that, I look at them and say, maybe you are the problem.
You are the problem.
Yeah, because nobody's perfect. And when it comes to relationship, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for two people who can understand each other. All right? You can see my weakness and you can see my strengths. And what I've noticed is the fact that when you enter a relationship, it's supposed to be a mix of my strength and my weakness versus your strength and your weakness. Most of the times, your weakness, my strength will complement your weakness, and your weakness will complement my strength. But what we do is we begin to fight the other person for having such a weakness. Yes. Whereas I am supposed to be strong for you in that area of your weakness. And that's the give and take of relationship. I don't want you to be like me. I am here to complement what you don't have. And the boy and the girl. The boy is this way. The girl is this way. And so we meet to complement each other. And I used to jokingly tell people that going to the market with my wife is one of the most horrifying experience. Yeah.
For a man.
Yes, for a man. Because we planned from the house that we're going to maybe go to a supermarket. We're going to go and buy a lamp, then buy maybe a couch. And then I see my wife going to another section of the place that we didn't plan. I said, no, this is where the couch is.
Have you seen? I'm sure you've seen the schematic of a man shopping and a woman. And so a man goes in and he says, I'm buying a stereo set. He goes straight there, to this, buys it and walks out. A woman wants probably a new hair attachment, but she's going to go buy groceries first and then check on food for the house, and you set out with a goal. So,
yes, moving around the shop gives inspiration.
Oh my!
And gives you an opportunity to get a bargain next time. They might be doing a sale near the couch.
Very correct. Yeah.
They might be doing a sale.
So now we're gaining understanding. We're learning about this thing. So it's beautiful to know, and it cuts across all relationships too. Even in a joint venture, so you look in the business, space, that it's not two strong people necessary. You've got one company A has competencies in one area, company B has competencies in another area where A doesn't have, and then they come together, to form a consortium of sorts to reach out and do much more than
they could have done alone.
Than they could have done, individually. Yeah. And that just sums up everything. The boy, girl, marriage, business, church.
It's amazing that this is the reason why a lot of people fight. Why do you spend money so much? Why do you save money so much? We need both. If you don't spend, your children will starve. If you don't save, we'll also starve. So the blend of the two is important per time. So I think the wisdom that is required is knowing what time to apply which person's strength, or what time to apply which person's weakness. And you see, the thing we call weakness is very powerful sometimes.
I would say that understanding is key.
Yeah.
This understanding is really important, because many times we have different opinions and different concepts. But in marriage particularly, apart from the entry points, it's maintaining the in-between.
That's the management.
People find very difficult. And that's because we go through different seasons of marriage. There's some times that you are really excited. There's some times that the challenges of life make you feel uncertain. There's some times that you will feel detached because maybe there is limited understanding, or both of you are trying to go in the same path, but because of the differences in what your concepts are, you are not matching together. But being prepared for those things is understanding that exists. There are other times within the institution of marriage, you're just relaxed and enjoying the process. So that also is there. I think I said women go a lot with words. I think having an understanding of what God's idea really is, the original intent of what a relationship is, and being able to communicate that between the partners, being on the same page, so that when you speak words, it's equal. And moving forward, then there will be no misconception. It is when there's misconception, then misunderstanding comes. But when we have an understanding, then relationship can move forward better. So relationship is all about understanding. For business relationship, I think planning is really important. And taking steps in that direction always helps to bring results. So,
Wow, I mean, that's such a solid conversation. For Larry, again, I've got to come to you and talk about your parents. I mean, we're still looking at this management thing. You've lived with them. So what are the positives? I mean, I know you've shared a couple of these things. It's, especially as applies to this. Um, you know, two different faiths.
Yeah.
That is a tough one. And yet there's, I mean, so much liberty. Like I shared, I sat with your parents. I think I was there for an hour when I was in Ibadan. And it was one of the best times, I mean, I've had, with older people in the long run. My parents are no longer, alive. And I'd look for, I mean, for me, anytime I'm in Ibadan, I'm going to spend time with them. That flow. So what lessons, have you gleaned? Because these are things you're going to carry on, in your life too.
So I think that one I've seen two people who are committed to themselves.
Committed to themselves.
Yes, committed to their marriage in spite of their differences. I've seen two good friends,
Friendship.
I've seen their friendship. I've seen a willingness to accept their differences and put their marriage at the forefront of, to supersede those differences. So sometimes I see one person who would want a particular thing to be done in a particular way, step back, for the sake of peace. And sometimes it's my dad who does it. Sometimes it's my mom who does it. But I see that consistently. I also think that I've seen two people who are just willing to learn and grow as they go through their different phases. So there was a phase where, we were in the house. There's a phase where we're not in the house. And they just continue to learn. They continue to grow. Every time you speak to them, they tell you with something new they have come up with to continue to, strengthen their bond. I also think I've seen that they have great relationships with their friends. So my dad has great relationships with my mom's friends. I've seen my mom have great relationships with my dad's friends. I think that I've also seen that help, in certain situations. I think those are a few.
Wow. Well, don't touch that down. We're going to take a short break and we're going to be back. But trust me, this is just so powerful. So we'll be back in a little while. Just stay glued and let's continue the conversation after this show.
See, it's one thing to dream, it's one thing to plan, but in the end, if we don't take measures, those things do us no good. And measures are taken by people who intend to fix something.
There's no child that shows up on the earth by accident. That's what Jeremiah was talking about. Before I was formed in my mother's womb, he knew me. Your identity is in connecting with the one who made you.
Nigeria, is there a hope in our future? And is there a future in our hope?
There's both, I'll say yes. There is a future in our hope, and there's a hope in our future. The hope in itself is not a strategy.
Welcome back to the conversation. We just had to come back, spot on and quickly as well. And we left off with Folari, and he was, sharing something real powerful about, his parents. And what gets me, is the fact that, so I'm a pastor, you're one as well. And this comes to you. That when we look at the context of scripture, we find a template. And the scripture says, first of all, the Christian marriage is supposed to be an exemplary one because it, reflects the relationship Christ has with the church.
Yes.
And so when two Christians come together, we expect the best of marriages, the best standards. Now, coming to Folarin's parents, we have, and these scenarios are everywhere, where a Christian marries a Muslim. And they seem to have it so down packed. And so they just, I mean, I've been there, so I know what I saw, and I can connect with what he's saying. And we're finding out that friendship is important. The willingness to just work with your partner is important. Understanding is a solid foundation. And you know, like he shared, sometimes you step back, understanding your weaknesses. Now, so what's wrong with so many marriages in the church today? You know, one of my sons in the faith in the house sent me a clip, and it was a picture taken with the phone from a court. Now, we don't know the statistics with respect to faith, but 2 days ago, in one of the courts in Abuja, there were 2 divorce cases. There were 22 divorce cases for mention on that day alone. 22, one after the other. And I mean, those are pointers to a crisis. So what's the problem? I know that's big, but what's going on really?
If you break the principles, you'll pay for it.
If you break the principles,
Yes.
you pay for it.
Yes, there are principles. There are principles. And I think one of the things I used to tell people is marriage is a college. If you enter as a professor, you will fail.
You feel.
You must remain as a student.
Oh.
Yes. Because most people enter as if they know it. I know what it means to be married. What you don't realize is that you're dealing with another human being. You're dealing with somebody who is going to change with time. And people fight change. I tell people growth brings change.
Wow.
When somebody grows, the person will change. It's going to be very bad for you to want somebody to just stay and not change. It's a bad thing. So you say, oh, my wife has changed, my husband has changed.
That's good.
They grew. They just grew. So so if you don't go as a student and keep learning how to, I'm not talking about learning, right? Just going to read books. It's good to read books. I'm talking about learning the person you married, observing, seeing where the person has changed, and see how you can adjust and complement. It's an ongoing thing that must never end. So that's one of the places that I've seen that a lot of Christians are having issues. I can't expect, I've been married to my wife now 13 years. I can't expect her to be the same person she was in year one. Year one, we didn't have a child. Now we have 3 children, 1 adopted, that's 4. And she's managing all of us.
That's a huge task, trust me.
So, and each child has his own complication, his own blessings. So that is a lot of work. So those changes are the things that we don't know how to adjust to. And so I say it's not a college, it's a compromise. Then I also say marriage is a compromise. You can't be the same way in marriage. You can't. If you want to remain who you were when you got married, you're not going to have a successful marriage. You will change, you will compromise. Oh, I don't like the lights on. You will have to change sometime. So me, I don't eat by 6. You might start eating by 9. So it is compromise. You will give some of yourself. You will take some of. I used to give this joke a lot. When I got married to my wife, I used to be the very, very meticulous one, the one who arranges everything, who matches the carpet with the.
That was before.
Before, yes. So I have this picture that I show to people that I can't sell. Year 1 of our marriage, you see my wardrobe, all my hanger facing one way. My wristwatches, everything laid out, the wardrobe. Oh, see my wife's wardrobe. Wow, scattered, everything scattered. We've been married 13 years. My wardrobe scattered. Our own arranged. And the sad part is that she just murmurs every time she arranges it and says things like, I don't know how somebody cannot just arrange their wardrobe. And I'm saying, you took my style. You took it from me.
You took everything away from me.
She's now the meticulous person. And I'm now, it seems like I'm the scattered person because there is always exchange
Mm.
in marriage. So
Wow.
even that weakness that you're complaining about, give it some time, because I'm spending a lot of time with you. It will begin to rub off on the other person. The person becomes more effective in management than you used to be.
Mm.
That is the beauty of marriage.
And then sometimes you're taking on other challenges.
Other challenges,
You
yeah.
know that you're juggling a lot of things, and so you don't have that much time
to
focus on that.
Yeah.
And so the disarray doesn't make you a bad person.
No.
The fact that now, because you look at that and say, I married him and he used to arrange everything. Now I married him and he scattered everything. That means he's worse. Now it's easy to see that,
yeah.
but if you factor in the fact that when I married him, he was probably just focused on maybe one line of business. Now he's got 5 businesses. So he's juggling more, he's doing more, he's bringing more money in.
Yeah.
Growth
But
will
the
bring
growth
change.
and the cost of that is that those suits are not going to be paid. Now he needs someone who would man
Those things.
things
it.
that he can pay attention to. And that is so brilliant. You know, when we have these kind of conversations, I say to myself, I wish I knew this before I got married.
Oh yeah.
And trust me, we went through our own, just those tough moments, trying to make my wife like me. And she probably trying to make, and you just find out, let people be, and let people, just let people be and let people grow. And once your marriage is undergirded by, friendship and understanding,
Commitment.
you just keep pushing and going on.
I think what he said is just key commitment. You need to commit to the process. You have to make up your mind from the beginning that you are in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
And then dare to think that it will work out for good. People like to throw in the towel nowadays. Say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. God has created every one of us to impact, to influence. And that's why he sets the solitary, you alone, in families.
Yes.
So it is so that you will make an impact, an influence for good. It's something that God has ordained. So you must make up your mind that you are going in for the long haul. That's it.
There's always a story I share with people, especially those who want to throw in the towel. When I was about 15 years old, I got some orange seeds. I love to plant things. I just love to experiment. I planted an orange seed and it grew, became a tree. 5 years, 6 years, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, there was no fruit. And so one day my mom was, she was hanging her clothes on the line, at the back of the house. And she saw me with a cutlass. I was going to chop the tree down. And she said, Shola, why are you chopping the tree down? And I said, I planted a tree. This is 10 years. There's no fruit. And she said, is it bothering you? I said, no. So why must you cut it down? Why don't you just leave it? Now, I'd already made some marks on it. And I chose to obey my mother. The next year, the tree began to bear fruit. And it was bearing fruit twice every year.
Wow.
Now, that's a tree that I was impatient because I waited 10 years and wasn't being fruitful.
Yeah.
And I use it to speak to people in marriage that, look, sometimes I say this jokingly that when you start off in marriage fighting, if you actually give it time, you get to a point where you're tired of fighting. Marriage has a way of bringing you to the point where I remember some years back, my wife and I, we just sat down laughing and we said, can you imagine what we used to fight about? We felt stupid.
Yeah.
So it goes with what you just said. If we give certain things time, and then I have another orange tree at the back of my house today. So came to Abuja, we planted 2 of them. One, it took about 5-6 years. It's bearing fruit twice every year. And then we had another one that is in its 11th year.
Okay.
And it is this 11th year that we're seeing fruit for the first time.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Do you know that you are no longer impatient with the orange tree?
Because of that experience. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't say, let's cut it down. Now you just watch it and you say, when will
Will
it
it
start
start?
bearing fruit?
But you are sure it will bear
It will.
fruit.
11th year.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's just amazing. Olarin, there's a lot we're looking at today, and we just must find our way of navigating. So when you're growing up with your parents, here's another interesting one. Did you have people living with you, or have you lived with other people? Because that's another another field entirely.
Yes, so we've had people live with us. I've also lived with other people, and it's been. I mean, so the people who lived with us, the ones that I remember fondly.
So there are some you don't remember. Okay, well, I mean, you're getting there.
I'm just saying that we had all sorts of people live with us, but I remember. I mean, the ones I formed strong bonds with were people who are very patient with us because we were children, who were very kind, and were people who acted like they were a member of our family. So I would see them today and still see them as members to me, even though they were maybe uncles or aunties, or I mean not biologically, but I would always see them as members of our family. So they were not distant. We could go to their rooms, we could speak with them. I've also lived with people. I've lived with all sorts of people.
Short term, long term.
Well, mostly short term. So I'll put this in context. So, for example, I trained as a lawyer. So when I came to Abuja to go to law school, my parents didn't live in Abuja. So I had to live with my aunt who lived in Abuja. So whilst I was not in school, I would go to her house.
Was she eager to get you out of the house?
I think you'd have to ask her that question. No, I think that, I mean, one thing she would always say, even till date, is that she liked the fact that I always washed plates. I mean, she just, every time she would say that, and I actually enjoyed washing plates. So it wasn't a big deal to me, but she would always say I mean, if she sees me today, she would be like, this is the guy who always kept my sink clean. And I realized that, I mean, it looked little to me, but it meant so much to her.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is over a decade. She continues to say that to people. So I'm not sure.
That's oiling that relationship.
relationship.
And part of what I've come to learn in the last 10 years is that maybe I've assumed a lot. I think that certain things should come to people come naturally by virtue of upbringing. But today we're having to teach a lot of people a lot of things. One of my daughters in the faith who was going to university and was going to stay with an uncle of mine because she didn't have accommodation there, and she was traveling from Calabar going because that's where she's from. When she was going, I said to her, maybe along the way I don't know what route you're taking, maybe it's Obolaf or one of those places, buy bananas, buy oranges, and just take there. Now, I know my uncle. They're going to say, how can you be coming to a house and you're bringing things? But it speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Because it shows you're considerate, you're thoughtful. And I find out that, and she did that. And I mean, they embraced her. She's no longer with them, he's off campus and all, but they still love her. Now, the oiling relationships and all relationships, whether it's in marriage, business relation, that's why at Christmas we send hampers. It's one of those things need to be oiled. But when it comes to living with people, many times it's always tension, crisis, and sometimes they have to say, look, I think it's time you move out. Back to you.
When you look at the fruit of the spirit, there's one that we don't like. We like the gentleness, the joy. We like all of those. Long suffering. Nobody likes long suffering. So whether someone is living with you or you're living with someone, that is one of the fruits of the spirits that you must cultivate, long suffering. Because people may have mood swings. So you don't know why the person is angry. You have to suffer long.
A long suffering, you just defined it, means you suffer
long.
for a long time.
Because most times that particular fruit of the spirit usually becomes a blessing to the person you are relating with. Because that's why somebody would say, I like you because you're just patient with me. Some people are going through things that they cannot articulate. So when they're throwing the tantrums and all of those, it is easy for you to react. But if you could just suffer long, and that's where you have to make excuses for people.
Wow.
I always tell my people that I talk to when it comes to cancer, I say, always sow the seed of forgiveness. Because it is a seed. A time will come, you will reap it. So if you have not sown the seed of forgiveness in your relationship, how come you're expecting to reap the seed of forgiveness?
Forgiveness as well.
So you don't know when you're going to reap it, just sow it. Every opportunity you have to bear with people, take it. Don't go about telling people, oh, you don't know that person I'm staying with is terrible, that person is this. No, there's one good thing the person did for you, accommodated you. So if that's the only good thing the person does for you, then suffer long with the person.
Oh, wow. And also contribute your quota as well.
Yes, relationship giving is one of the keys. It may not be material gift, it may be service. It could be service. Like he's talked about washing plates. I'm telling you, any woman, at least the women that I know, would die to have you around. We say, no, this guy is just good at this. And especially if you do it very well. My wife doesn't like people to wash her dishes because she feels they don't do it properly. All right. So if she has somebody, I wish I could be that person. But unfortunately, I'm not. But if there's somebody who could, if that's a service, you may not have money. If that's a service you could render, or the service of taking care of the kids, or the service of cleaning the house, or the service of washing the car, just look for something to give. When you give, they don't forget you.
Wow.
Yes.
Give.
When you give, they don't forget you in a relationship.
It just gets us back to giving again.
Yes.
And now, so let's look at this. What if you say you don't have anything to give?
It's impossible.
always have.
I know he's given service.
It's impossible.
But there are people who say, well, I really can't. Let me paint a scenario. You're living with someone and you've stayed maybe 3-4 years. You've got a job and you're benefiting from maybe free air conditioning, there's electricity because there's a generator. You've never thought that, why don't I just take 5,000 naira and put units, electricity units? Never crossed your mind. And so long suffering, and the person is suffering long, but you're not thinking that those things are needed because you probably suddenly become entitled.
Yes. You're going to lose favor eventually.
Yeah. I have a story in regards to living with someone and being lived with. I have someone that has been in our life. My first child, he's in his 20s. He's going to be 22 this year.
Who's been in your life.
Yes. And
your first child.
My first child is 22 this year.
Okay.
And she came into our life when he was 9 months. She took care of him. She's like this. He's a giant. He's 6'4", and she's really small, like smaller than me. But they all refer to her as auntie because I have 3 kids, and she helped in taking care of them, getting them to do things, grow up, take care of themselves, and different things. Now, if my kids want something new, they tell me, let's buy a new computer for her. Let's do this for her. She's their heartbeat. I don't know how to explain it. And I love her so much because, like you said, she has coped with the times when things were difficult for me. I'm a chartered accountant. There was a time and I did that while I was married. There was a time where I need to spend time really studying, like leave everybody, the husband, the children, like go away to Lagos and go and sleep on a bunk just to pass. And I left all the kids. She moved in with my in-laws with the kids to take care of them. For me, that's a big sacrifice. I can never forget
And
that.
now your children are
And now
gone
my
through- yeah.
true. She, like he said, they become a member of the family. Though we are not related by blood, I can't say that she has figured in our life so much that for some people that we are related by blood, we don't have the same relationship.
Very true.
So it's really important. There is something you can give. You can't say that you can't give anything. And I have stayed with people that I couldn't give money, but I like arranging things. I always arrange the house, arrange the wardrobe, arrange this. And I remember one of the people I said, she likes me because whenever she comes in, everywhere smells nice, everywhere is neat. For that alone, she just loves it. You must have something you can give. Remember what I said. You need to realize in your life that you are here to influence people for good, make an impact, and touch someone. That's how God built every one of us. There is something you can give or drop. Like he said, life is about giving. You just have to give.
Wow. I mean, well, guys, I'm sure you're just gleaning all of this wisdom and also learning and trusting that the changes that are required, you're also going to make, because what's the essence of all of this if you won't, inculcate it and, trust God for grace for change? The exit point, and maybe this is what will lead us to exiting and ending this conversation. He hit on something. I began by saying the entry and the exit points are very critical. There are times when we do need to exit relationships, even a business relationship. There are times when you just come and say, okay, look, we've grown enough, as a unit, and I think it's time for us to branch out. But how we do it matters. So he spoke about an ex who was even recommending someone for him.
Yeah.
And that's because he managed the exit well.
Yeah.
Some people don't care, and they believe in slamming the door when they leave. And I'll share a story, and we'll just take your personal experiences and comments. I had a man who was introduced to me by a son in the faith many years ago. This is probably 14 years ago. And I needed to buy vehicles. And he said, hey, I've got this friend who imports vehicles from outside the country. So I was buying two truck heads at that time, and I wanted a Mercedes for myself, and I wanted another vehicle for my wife. And I put the money in his hands. Now, one way or the other, my vehicle didn't come 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. And this was someone I just gotten to know through someone who recommended it. And it was really bad, and he kept saying, I'm going to bring it, I'm going to send it in and all of that. Well, I got to a point where I was speaking to him on the phone, and I said, honestly, I just leave you to God. Because as far as I was concerned, I lost the money. But I said to myself then, even if I get the car back, I think the way I've been treated in this relationship, I don't want to have this relationship anymore. Eventually my cars came with all the apologies, and we kind of moved on. And then I had a project that I needed 20 million to kind of help birth. And the only person that will come into my mind was this same guy who I thought didn't treat me well. And so typically you're saying, no, 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 I'm not going to knock on the door. Eventually, I had to humble myself
Humble pie.
and swallow my whatever pride. And I went to him and sat him down, and I said, look, I know, but I've got this and I need 20 million. And he sat and looked and said, okay, I'll give you 5 million naira as a gift. I'll give you 15 million naira payable when able. So I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Within 2 weeks, I got the 20 million naira. After a year plus, I then went to him to say, okay, look, here's part of the money that I'm bringing back. You've got to give me time, for the other. And he said to me, you're not owing me any money. He said, the day I gave you that money, I gave it to you as a gift. He said, I can show you my notepad. I have those who owe me money there, and your name is not there. And 20 million just. Now, here's where I'm going. In my mind, I didn't want to have anything to do with the person. But I had to go and open a door that I never thought I would need to open. And that relationship has blossomed even beyond that. It's become a very solid, ally and friend. Now, those are the things that instruct me. While you learn lessons from other people, the experiences, you have scripture to guide you. It is these experiences that line up with scripture that for me are very, very important. But some people live as if I'm slamming the door, and I if that's, I'll never have to walk through it again. Let's hear from you. What are your thoughts on it? Maybe you have peculiar experiences or whatever it is.
I think it was Paul that said that as much as you can
lies within you. Yes.
Live
peaceably
with all men. Don't ever slam the door. And I cannot say that there are not times where the doors need to be slammed so that you can move on. But the moment you move out of the door, go and repair that bridge. Yes.
Repair the
go and
bridge.
Repair, yes. Because sometimes there are people who could be in your life who are toxic to you. They are destroying you, and you are manipulating yourself and allowing them to manipulate you. You may need to exit. But the moment you are out of that place and you have healed, go back. And that's the way of the Christian.
Wow.
That's the way of Christ. So it is advisable, don't slam any door. If there is a need to slam a door, make sure, give yourself some time, go back and repair it. Just like you're giving the example, you don't know when you're going to need that door. Relationship, you can't predict, you can't say, this is how my help, how my provisions will come. You cannot predict that. So make sure that you're at peace as much as you can.
Can't lies within you.
There. Yeah. Throw away the pride. Throw away the pride and call the person, and tell the person. Sometimes you could even go and forget about what they did to you. I've done that several times. Where I've gone to my mentors, pastors that I've served with, and I've gone to them and I've told them that, see, what I did was wrong. I feel what happened to me, I felt bad about. But I would go to them and say, you are the one who is the senior. You're the one who is the father. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And they would embrace me back, and then we start a relationship again. So it's important that you live the way of Christ.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is solid. Fulani, let's come to you and then would.
So I think that what my perspective and what I've observed is that people are treasures. But you're never sure how the treasure is going to come to you or when it's going to come to you.
Sparkle.
So you don't treat treasure anyhow, right? So even if you have to close a door, I agree completely with you. You always say to us that be careful how you close the door. Close it gently, because you might need to walk through it again. And I think that's always my. That's my mindset. That's my principle as well. I've seen business relationships that went sour at a particular point in time, and I've seen maybe one person go on to do wonderful things, and I would think, oh, if only they had managed the exit, both of them would still be doing this together. But then it became too complicated. Someone's gone public to vilify someone else. Some of these things that happen. So I think it's very important to always remember that people are treasures and to be patient with people, just as we expect people to be patient with us as well. So I think that
Stacey.
Forgiveness is key.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is key. They said it's human to err, but forgiveness is divine. So I think that's really important. Give the other person benefit of doubt. Like we said, you are not perfect, so don't expect the other person to be perfect, and just give benefit of doubt. Then time helps things. Sometimes
Time is
you
amazing.
just need to give yourself some time.
time,
Maybe
yeah.
time to be apart. Maybe just time not to communicate.
Time to
and
understand.
understand. There's a way that time heals things, and then the soil is not so fresh, and the feeling or the anger that you feel or the expression that you wish to say right now. There's a way, if you give it time, you can see another perspective.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're sitting in somebody else's chair,
Sure.
you can see things a different way, or wearing their shoes. So
Yeah.
time heals
Perspective.
wounds. Perspective is good, but forgiveness definitely is key.
Yeah.
That's
Wow. Well, here we are. Want to thank all our viewers. I don't know if there's any question from our audience that we may want to take. If there is, then we probably may need to respond to that. But we want to. There is none. But we can see such amazing comments and compliments. We want to thank every single one of you. Maybe you could just share some of those with us so that we can see. Complimenting one another in strengths and weaknesses. I mean, that's a very positive one. And then we have, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of those expressions because, those are really, really deep thoughts. If you break principles, you will pay. And that again, takes us to principles. The whole of the universe is governed by principles.
Yeah.
Relationships are governed by principles. There are boundaries, there are do's, there are don'ts in every relationship. It's just like we're saying a relationship needs to be oiled like an engine. That's also a principle. If you don't oil it, things tend to grind,
Yeah.
and eventually your engine knocks. And you wonder what happened. And look, when we think about a car engine, and sometimes, so when you've got drivers, and if you're privileged, you have a driver, and you teach them what to do. And I find this sometimes, that I would open the hood of my car and check the oil and find out the oil is low. And I've taught my driver, this is what you've got to do. And yet he's not doing it. But you can imagine, so if you've got a car, maybe a Toyota Corolla, maybe it's a 2018, and the engine is going to cost you 2.5 million. And because one guy refuses, or you yourself refuses to buy that 10,000 naira engine oil and pouring, it now costs you 2-point-something million. That's painful. And typically, when an engine comes out of a car, somehow when they put it back, it just never gets right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it is, that we don't just those little gestures of kindness that will oil something that could be massively beneficial to us. We kind of just say, well, I don't need to feel entitled. And at the end of the day, you're at a loss, and huge, huge loss, because God's blessing in your life is connected to someone.
Yeah.
It's connected to your parents. There's a parental blessing. Honor your father and your mother so that your days will be long. So some people's lives are cut short because they just fail to honor. So there's a blessing there. There's a blessing in coming under the covering of your pastor.
Yes.
In having a mentor in your life who shortens your distance from point A to B. And that could be 5 years, and he makes it 1 year.
Yes.
And there's a blessing in relationships, in just asking, in a multitude of counsel, right counsel. There is wisdom. But there are people who throw those things away and say, I'm a self-made man, and I want to be a self-made person. And it just never works, because this relationship principle governs all of life. Well, we've come to the end of the conversation. I mean, this could go on, and I'm already thinking maybe we should be considering a part 2.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much to learn, and I know that people out there are truly being enriched and truly being blessed. Again, I want to thank you, Pastor Harrison, and also Stacy Ozigi and Folari, also known as Flo. Thank you for your
Thank you, sir.
contributions. And I said to him, just during the break, that if his parents are in town, I'd love to host them on the. I mean, for me, there are lessons to learn from the way they've been able to manage their relationships. And we want to thank every one of you, our entire audience. Thank you so much. We thank you for sharing. Thank you. And keep sharing this, because there are people who need to, who need to listen to it. You can copy the link, send it to, those your WhatsApp groups, and let people connect with this. It's going to bring healing to homes. It's going to bring a lot of restoration to lives. We want to thank you, and we look forward to having you at the next conversation. Conversation Now holds once every month. So the next conversation is going to be in the month of March. Just watch out. We'll have all the publicity out there, and we look forward to having you. God bless you. Have a lovely evening with your families today.
We know this, that God's word has integrity.
Wow.
It can be trusted. Anytime something went wrong, it wasn't on God's side, it was on our side.
Basic economics teaches us that you must have a priority list, because what you need is the wisdom to know what is important per time, and the courage to watch other things undone that are not important.
For Nigeria to work, you have to have someone who is comfortable with the different tongues, the different faiths, the different, ethnicities of Nigeria, who is very comfortable working with everybody.